Alright guys, so this is take two of my conservatism recording because the first one you couldn't hear my voice, which I know will devastate most of you. But because of that, I'm going to try something different. I think because I had the PowerPoint on full view, it wouldn't record. So here, let's try it this way. Hopefully it works. So we're going to be talking about conservatism. Conservatism was a reaction to the French Revolution and specifically to the reign of Napoleon. Now, conservatism in its purest form comes directly from the Congress of Vienna. The champion of conservatism is going to be Clemens von Metternich, the Austrian minister, and the alliances that are formed at the Congress of Vienna are going to be um, the ones that really push this conservative agenda in Europe throughout the 1800s. Now, it's important to note that the Congress of Vienna and the conservative order are actually pretty successful. There's no challenge to the balance of power. Remember, the balance of power was established to make sure um, that France couldn't get out of control again. There's no challenges until the 1800s, the late 1800s. I apologize, when Germany is going to be unified, and they didn't really have another full-on war until World War One, 100 years after the Congress of Vienna. Now, that's not to say there weren't revolutions, because there were. That's not to say wasn't nationalist movements, because there were, and we're going to talk about them later on. Uh, a couple of important things to note about conservatism. Uh, the conservatives kind of underestimated liberalism and nationalism, so that's a negative point. Uh, that's why eventually this system will stop working. But the whole idea of collective security was pretty successful. The concert, or the big four, right? Austria, Russia, Prussia, and England, right, in the beginning, uh, backed each other up. Anytime there was even this slight chance of a nationalist movement or a revolt in these countries, the rest of them showed up to put down the revolt. The major goal is going to be to define and monitor the status quo, meaning the major goal is to make sure that the legitimate uh, people who had claims to the thrones stayed in the thrones, and that really they weren't able to get rid of the old ideas. They monitored this across Europe, and like I said, they were fairly successful. Conservatism is going to rise in reaction, like we said, to liberalism, and is going to be a popular alternative for those who were frightened by the French Revolution. Remember, this is a scary thing. With the sounds of hope and liberty in the background, um, the revolutionaries got, you know, crazy carried away with the guillotine and the Reign of Terror and all that stuff. Um, Early conservatism, the goal really was to reestablish traditional ruling classes, so therefore they supported them, and also to kind of hold on to what was old and what worked for them in the past. The main idea of conservatism, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. There's no need to. Whereas progressivism or liberalism is this idea of moving forward, constant change, making yourself better. Conservatism's like, oh, well, if we're already good to start with, why do we have to work to make ourselves better? Um, Conservatism was supported by many Romantic writers, believed in order, society, and the state, faith, tradition, uh, other characteristics. They thought history was a continuum. History was living and history continued. So, historically, if something worked, why wouldn't we do that same thing? The basis of society is the way it's supposed to be. It's organic, it's not contractual. It happens that way because it was meant to happen that way. Why all of a sudden do people think that they should have a deal with the government? Um, The idea was that stability and longevity would mark a good society, not progress and change. So the longer they existed and were stable, it counted more for, if they had, equal rights or there was more progress. Uh, some conservatives believe that the only legitimate source of political authority was God in history. They definitely rejected the social contract theory, saying that people and the government, owed each other. Uh, Conservatives believed that self-interests do not lead to social harmony, but to social conflict. And maybe in a lot of ways that's true. If you think about it, and the more people who are worried about themselves and making only them better, it leads to some falls in our society in terms of people who also think they should maybe be doing better. Therefore, conservatives denounced individualism. They denounced natural rights. And they believed that it was okay that society was hierarchical. Um, I hate that word, but that there was a hierarchy in society and that some people got more than others. They thought that that was natural. Um, Conservatism, like we said, is going to be relatively successful. Now, just because conservatism is relatively successful does not mean that there are not uh, any revolutions or uprisings during this time period. We're going to see quite a few, actually. Looking at the map of Europe, uh, right here is, hold on, let me zoom in a little. If we're looking here, we see a map. We see this right here is the German Confederation. Right, this over here is the Austrian Empire. Here's Russia, the Ottoman Empire, Italy. Right, there's going to be some uprisings in Piedmont, Sardinia, and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. We'll talk more about that later. Spain, there is going to see some uprisings, and we're even going to see some revolutionary thought in the German Confederation. They're actually going to have to pass something called the Carlsbad Decrees to kind of denounce revolutionary talk on the campuses of universities. Metternich himself is going to be behind that. Uh, Prussia, uh, Prussia seemed as if they were going to go the liberal route because of some of the policies they passed during the reign of Napoleon. But the leaders of the Prussian government were actually conservatives known as the Junkers, Junkers. And eventually, though, the Prussians are going to unite the German Confederation, which is going to be a major act of nationalism. So not everything stays the same in Prussia. But remember, Prussia is very military-minded, very strong. Right? Austria is a little worried about Prussia. They don't always get along. France, at this point, had gone back um, to a constitutional monarchy. Louis XVIII was king in France. Great Britain, the parliament was led by the Tories, who are a conservative group. They're actually going to pass something called the Corn Laws, which stops British people from buying grain from outside of Great Britain. The Corn Laws are going to actually hurt many of the lower um, the people who are making less money in Britain. So the poorer people in Britain are going to suffer from the Corn Laws. Meanwhile, the wealthy um, people who own the land that the grain was farmed on, they're going to make a ton of money. So this is actually going to result in a couple of uprisings here. I believe the Peterloo uprising, where people are going to go up against the Corn Laws and protest the Corn Laws. That's going to take place in Great Britain. Russia is going to be led by Alexander the First until 1825, and then when Alexander leaves office, when he dies, basically, Nicholas is going to become czar, And when Nicholas becomes Tsar, um, the Decembrists, who are military officers, upper class military officers who are against the czarist autocratic ways, are going to rebel against him. They're going to do their best to not let Nicholas become czar. Nicholas's army is going to win, right? They're going to take down the Decembrist uprising. That being said, that's going to create a much more reactionary Nicholas. Nicholas is going to be a complete autocrat. He's going to make Russia into a police state, state-sponsored terrorism. If anyone is against the Russians, then they could get killed by the Russian government. He's going to get rid of any kind of representative assemblies. He is going to uh, alienate Russian intellectuals. He's going to monitor education to make sure that people are only hearing what he wants them to hear. And we're ultimately going to get a very, very harsh conservative government in Russia. Um, that's really all I want to go over for now. I'm going to have a second video very soon on some ideology and also some of the revolutionary movements in Europe at this time. For now, know what conservatism is, because on Wednesday in class we'll have a short quiz. Know what the Carlsbad decrees were. Know what the Peterloo massacre was, and know about the Decembrist uprising and the Corn Laws. All right, so the Decembrist uprising, the Corn Laws, Peterloo massacre, definition of conservatism. All right, thank you.